Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Distribution with GTDC. This conversation was recorded live at the GTDC APJ Summit held November 17, 18 in Singapore. In this special panel, moderator Frank Vitagliano is joined by four industry leaders. Patrick Aronson, CMO and EVP of Asia Pacific at Westcon Comstore, V.S. Hariharan, Group CEO of Reddington Limited, Luis Lorenzo, SVP and Chief Executive for ASEAN and Hong Kong at Ingram Micro, and Jaideep Malhotra, President of Asia Pacific and Japan at TD Synnex. Together, they explore the future of distribution, from the evolution of the channel to the impact of emerging technologies like AI, to the rapidly shifting needs of today's business community. Each executive brings a unique perspective on where the industry is headed and the opportunities that lie ahead. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's dive in.
All right, Jaideep, I'll start with you. So, and I want to start sort of at the macro level here. Obviously, Alex gave his view on the economy and certainly on APJ, and talked a little bit about front loading and some of the demand. But I don't think there's any question that the environment has been pretty resilient over the past year or so. What's your thoughts on that? And then transition to, as you think about 26, what are you thinking about, and how are you looking at the potential for opportunity, growth, et cetera?
Thanks, Frank, and thanks for the opportunity. So I think Alex gave us a very good view what's happening in 2025 in Asia Pac. But if you look at it, Asia has been growing faster than the other developed economies for a while now. And I think it's got to do with a few things. I think the emerging middle class, younger population, lower base from where we started, and a faster pace of technology diffusion. So there used to be a correlation that if GDP grew by X, IT was growing by 2X, but I think that has changed. I think it is now growing by 3X, in my opinion. And I think the other factor really is that Asia is not one market. It's actually diversified. It's portfolio in itself. So it's much more resilient, where one economy is not doing well, the other will do well. And last but not the least, 3 out of the top 5 economies in the world are in APJ: China, India, and Japan, right? That's very powerful. And 2.5 billion people, or maybe 3 billion people, driving the consumption, driving the economic activity. So I think there's a lot of factors in APJ that is securing this long-term trend of growth. And to your last question, what do I see for 2026? I think I'll just point out to IMF stat here that 60% of the world's growth in 2026 is going to come out of APJ. And that's very powerful. So I think we're in the right region, we're amongst the right technology producers, and I think it's good for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, and that's very thoughtful in terms of some of the items that you mentioned. When I was sitting there listening to Alex, and I was looking at the GDP growth rates, and I was thinking about, despite all the investment that you talked about in the U.S., it's 2.5, maybe 3, right? And we'll see next quarter what that looks like. And Europe is probably similar. Again, different countries reacting differently, but that's really interesting when you think about it country by country, and such a huge opportunity here, which is why everybody wants to do business. Right? Patrick, let me go to you. And so we'll kind of cover some ground a little bit that we kind of talked about, or Alex kind of talked about, but the tariff thing or situation is something that we can't just dismiss. And so, again, last year at this time, there was an incredible amount of discussion, and frankly, a lot of people were very worried, very concerned. So how have you seen it played out, over the last year? What's your view on how it's, what's evolved?
Right. Well, Alex's, your presentation was really interesting. So that whole notion of the forward purchasing right? So you've seen this growth in many of the Asian markets that have an export-based business, which frankly hits just about everybody in APAC. I mean, even Singapore, is exporting services, or it's a services hub for a lot of the businesses in the region that are export-based. And so you've seen that growth, and sort of explaining that a bit by saying that the U.S. buyers have forward purchased was interesting, because we really haven't seen a dip in the business, right? We were definitely projecting a much bigger impact to our business on Liberation Day. People keep using that term as on that day when those tariffs were announced. We were definitely a bit nervous, and there was, distribution is naturally paranoid, right? We live in constant paranoia, and there's always a sense of that, and so we always are looking at the worst possible outcome. Yeah, none of that really materialized in APAC, to be frank. So that didn't happen. But of course, we got a good explanation today of some of the dynamics that may have, caused that, and that now we're going to see maybe a normalization, or potentially as we go into calendar 26, we're going to see just sort of a broader acceptance, and the sort of dips and like any kind of supply chain disruption, it takes a while for it to straighten out. And so I think we'll begin to see that maybe towards the second half of next year. So yeah, it wasn't a huge factor. I think the reality though is in our industry, right? We talked about, being in the right markets, but also being in the right business. The investments and the growth in IT, for lack of a better term, is just so significant. We're just at the beginning in many of our regions for this transformation that's happening, whether it's in the networks, whether it's in the applications, whether it's in our people who are changing. It's just early days, right? And I'm not just talking about AI. For many businesses, it's just basic digital transformation is still early days. If you look at the broad segmentation of many of our markets, so much of it is still SMB and commercial, and they're just now going down that path of adopting digital tools. So that just means that will be that 2x, 3x type number on the growth. So I think we're just quite bullish on it.
Yeah.
I think the issue is the more interesting dynamics are some of the things that Alex also presented on, some of those sort of blue sky type things, right? What is China's role going to be? We're sitting in a room today filled with primarily American technology companies from the vendor perspective. I think there's ABB's here, right? There's not, maybe not an American-based company. I think it's the only one in the room. But fundamentally, that's who and Lenovo, of course. But fundamentally, what are the role of Chinese technologies companies going to be, right? China's taking a friendly approach now to sort of recollect itself and rethink how it wants to go. And we're seeing a lot more Chinese companies, tech companies, expanding outside of China. And of course, this is the region they're going to come into first. This is their natural first stop. What is the impact that that's going to have? How is that going to drive digital adoption? A lot of things to consider, which I think will be interesting. And then seeing how American tech firms respond to that, right? And I think that's going to play out right here in this region, first and foremost, over the next several years, which will be really interesting.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you mentioned, being paranoid, and I guess any business that kind of measures basis points has to be paranoid, right? I mean, it's very logical.
Healthy paranoia.
Healthy paranoia, I'll give you that. Harry, Patrick started talking a little bit about strategy and thinking about some of the things that could influence your business, your strategy. But what are some of the variables that you think about, particularly as you are thinking, heading into planning for 2026? If you haven't already gotten there, I'm sure you're pretty close to it. What are some of the things that you're thinking about?
Sure. Thanks, Frank. Distribution landscape and what we are operating in, the whole place is transforming. And one of the things I often talk about is we used to be a one-to-many player. We take one product, one brand, one model, and used to distribute to an omni-channel of resellers to a lot of customers. But with the cloud, with AI, it's becoming many-to-many on one side. So many products, many software products, many services products. And it's going from being transactional to life cycle, to managing the full life cycle. These are two radical changes that we are in the middle of. And the non-physical part of the business globally, the global distribution industry has become 24%. It used to be 12% 2 years back. For us, it's 16%. The markets we operate in, we are in India, Middle East, Africa, Turkey, and South Asia, just entering Southeast Asia. Clearly, that's the biggest area of growth. So I know there's a lot of talk about AI, but the software part of our business is exploding. Last quarter that went by, it grew 48%. Last year it's grown 24%, so it's growing very rapidly. It's a multi-billion-dollar business for us, so that includes cloud hyperscaler business, it includes security, it includes SaaS, and of course now it includes agentic AI. So it's a very broad transformation. There are two things that we need to be prepared in this transformation. What capabilities do we build? What enablers we put in place? Everything from a digital platform, lifecycle management, agentic AI, and the whole work. So it's clearly one area of focus that we'll be planning and accelerating. The second piece of it, similar to what Patrick and Jaideep mentioned, see the up markets have actually remained very strong. So India, for example, UAE, KSA, all very high double-digit growth. There are few things happening. One is there's a lot of investment from both government and corporate, whether it's data centers, whether it's on-prem servers. That's a big area of growth, and we need to somehow participate in the data center. So we're looking at how to participate in the data center. We are not directly involved in the data centers put up by the hyperscalers, but the non-hyperscaler business, we definitely play an act of stitching solutions together. So we are looking at how to play and invest in that. A third area that's happening very interesting for us is our markets, the mobility segment, we are in mobile phones as well, is growing much faster than the world average. There's a premiumization that's happening in markets like India. And last year, our smartphone business grew 18%. And so clearly, we are focused on creating go-to-market channels for reaching the premium customer. And finally, we are seeing elements of the AI PC adoption, not necessarily, I don't know, used for AI particularly, but the higher end PCs. So this quarter, for example, in India, we saw 22% of our commercial PCs was AI PCs. So there's a lot happening. Clearly, we need to invest in all of these different trends. We're also very watchful of the scarcity and shortage that's about to come, and we need to factor that in. Clearly, that's something that's a headwind. We are also looking out to see what's going to be announced at CES, because we know there are a lot of new interesting announcements expected in January. So many things we need to factor in, but clearly the non-physical part of the business, both on SaaS and on AI, will be the biggest investment.
Yeah. You know, the investment piece is really interesting, because if you think about investment in any business, it's obviously a major part of company strategy. But if you think about it from the standpoint of a distributor business, where the margins are very tight, there's not a lot of room to make mistakes, right? I mean, and you know, you guys, not to compliment you too much, but your companies have done an amazing job over the last 5-10 years investing into the digital transformation, right? And it's going to have to continue, you know, for the next period of time, because now we see the transition and the evolution of, you know, of the rest of the technology that's happening, like AI. And, you know, Luis, that leads me to a discussion to build a little bit on what I talked about earlier today about how your business has evolved, how the distributor's role has evolved with the rise of, you know, whether it's cloud, cybersecurity, AI, of course. So what competencies do you see now that are essential for success for the distributors to be able to continue to partner effectively with the vendor community and, of course, support your customers and ultimately the end users?
So thanks, Frank. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the time that you have gave us to be with us these 2 days. That question, after Sandra, Alex, and the panelists being here, I think that they have replied pretty much to everything, but let's just give me a little bit touch of it. So if I pick first cloud and security, right? I think that we distributors in the past 10 years, right, with the rise of cloud, we have developed a good technology offer around both infrastructure as a service with the hyperscalers and applications and collaboration tools around software as a service. At the same time, we start to add some value-added services, mainly around assessment, migration, and some consulting services along that journey. If you pick up the cybersecurity space, all of us have developed technology offers too around edge security needs, application security environments, and at the data center, right? That can be the typical infrastructure, it can be at the networking. Now, this area will continue to grow. If you see, I pick always IDC, it's easier. So I pick, if you see the market, right, in Asia, they will grow between 14%, 23%. So I think that the challenge for us more now on the cloud and security piece is what are the new incubators, the new technology vendor coming on this AI era. And AI, we have been speaking about that since we were here yesterday, we went home, right, and we wake up this morning now, right? So we are going to sleep with AI and we wake up with it. And AI is at the same time a great opportunity. It's a challenging, right? Because think as a distributor, right? And we were here, Ingram, we are at 45, 47-year-old company. So we were here 15 years ago at the age of the cloud. We were here 25 years ago in the internet age. At that point in time, the internet brought to us, from a global GDP economy standpoint, $2.5 trillion that were created at a global level. Now, if I pick IDC last year presentation, it was stating that the global economy will get $19.7 trillion that will be generated net new because of AI. So $19.7 trillion, it's a China as a country, as a GDP. It's huge. Europe is $25 trillion GDP. So when you see this, it's 8 times, 10 times, who really knows, we will discover in 2030, but it's big. So picking up that, right, and I was picking some of all your presentations, connecting with what we are doing, right? We have been developing the last 3-4 years, all of us, technology offers that are matching the customer needs. In the end of the day, this is all about the customer. Governments, large enterprise, they have the needs of sovereignty, high computation needs, and low latency. So you have the DGX, you have the InfiniBand. So when you go to enterprise and SMEs, we are now offering AGX. We are offering data management, we are offering security with RAG, we are offering security for the data center. So what we are building net new, how you integrate the platform with the technology from an infrastructure standpoint, because this is not about selling a server. This is not selling a storage. This is not selling a networking. All of this is interconnected. So we are bringing more and more services, connecting with our partner ecosystem. Hyperscalers are bringing AI as a service that can go from a large enterprise organization to a small language model from an SMB standpoint. And now, as I speak about this some minutes ago, edge computing, AI development. You see the spark. You can have for $3,000, $4,000, $15,000, let's say more commoditized AI development need. So it's becoming more commoditized at the end user level, and this means for researchers, developers mainly. So we as a company, as a distributor, for example, Eunice that leads Singapore, and all of you know Eunice, right? 3 months ago, she was doing an event here in Singapore to end users, companies with $100 million plus of business in the enterprise space. 200 companies come, and what was our intention? Share with them what AI can do for their businesses. And as we do that, we are doing demand gen to our partner ecosystems and to our vendors. Now, of course, this is easy to say, it's difficult to do. We need to shift from offering technology to offering what AI is going to do for outcomes of these companies. We still, was fun to see. We have moved from speaking about the technology silo to the AI outcome. So it's a journey. It's being an interesting journey. I think that after so many years, we are seeing something that is very exciting for all of us here. So, and I think that all of us are really
Well-
on this.
Well, I'm happy to see that you've paid such attention to the previous presentations, because obviously you've been able to, next year though, we're going to have you come up first, so before the presentations. Jaideep, let's talk about cloud vendors and hyperscalers, right? Because that's a topic that for the last 4 or 5 years has been really important. In fact, there was a point in time when people were really concerned about the impact that, hyperscalers in particular would have on, the distributors' opportunities. And they obviously have lots of go-to-market options available, direct, indirect, et cetera. But there's 2 questions that I have for you. The first would be, why should the suppliers of cloud solutions leverage distribution, right? And it goes back to Harry, your point about, the physical piece really being transitioned away, and it's not physical anymore. And secondly, how can distributors most effectively work with hyperscalers, right? And how does it benefit both your customers and their customers?
Sure. So I'll try and put in such a way that people remember what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if I think about our role as a distributor for any technology, while we are end-to-end, we are a marketplace in ourselves, we also pay attention to specialization. So with every technology, we need to think about specialization within that broad framework. So for cloud hyperscaler vendors, and I'm going to talk about Tech Data and TD Synnex, think of RISE, R-I-S-E. R is for reach. I is for intelligence and insights. S is really for scalability, support, and solutions. And E is really important for cloud marketplaces, is ecosystem orchestration, right? So RISE, that's what I would say. But none of that is possible if distributors do not invest in their own platforms, right? So the key here is the distributors who are investing in their own platforms will drive better outcomes for cloud vendors. And that's what we are trying to do at Tech Data and TD Synnex. Our Stream 1 platform, it's our own IP. We are investing in it. We just recently enhanced with FinOps, SecOps, white label storefronts, market syndication. And if I go a little bit deep into each of the element, RISE, I mean, there are simple things. One is, think of it as a cloud supply chain. You need operational backbone as a Microsoft or AWS so that you are freed up for innovation, right? So distributor provides that cloud operational support and scale. But there's more to it. There is the reach. Distributors have a reach which is a combination of various GTMs, right? Which cannot be achieved on its own if you are just a single technology provider. So orchestration becomes important. 24/7 support, premium level services. I mean, simple things like marketing programs. I mean, one of the cloud vendors have 137 pages marketing incentive program. So we have a consulting practice just to make our partners understand how to leverage those programs so that they can deliver value to the customers. So simple examples. Then insights and information that really gives our partners the ability to predict future workloads on that cloud. Then I think Hari talked about, it's about lifecycle management, right? So I think if you put all these things together and layer on top that distributors' role in a specialist practice is to really skill our partners, certify our partners, and enable them to sell advanced solutions around cloud, data, AI, modernization. And I would be surprised if nobody wants us. I mean, this is the value we bring. But the key thing is specialization and platform.
Yeah, I mean,
Just going to add, I think, when you ask the question, the real question should be to the cloud, to the hyperscalers themselves, not for us. Why should they use us? It's why are you using distribution so much now, right? Every one of us has got a pretty sizable distribution business with selected cloud hyperscalers because they have completely come to the point where they realize that's what they need. They didn't start that way. And we see that also, by the way, with SaaS companies as well, right? Companies that started up as pure SaaS plays and pure direct are now looking at distribution saying, oh yeah, actually, that's how I need to get to market now. So I think it's actually, that ship has sailed, it's down that path, and it's all part of the distribution transformation that's happening.
And I just want to complete the answer to the second question, how we can work better. I think a deeper alignment along the strategic priorities of hyperscalers is so important because there's so much to it. I think I start with that. And co-developing programs that actually increase the skill set and the adoption at the customer level is so important. So eventually, I mean, we are there to scale through platform, automation, and building capabilities so that there is better customer adoption for cloud technologies through ecosystem orchestration.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, when I realized how important distribution was to the hyperscalers is when it became obvious that they had teams that were built to interact with hyperscalers, just like any of the other vendors in the marketplace. They had teams that were responsible for distributors, teams that were responsible for solution providers, and therefore that integration started, that collaboration started, right? And it's continued. I mean, we've got folks in here today from the hyperscalers, and in my view on it is it's similar to any distributor, vendor, solution provider relationship that exists out there. That's kind of what it's evolving to. A little bit nuanced, obviously, but it's evolving, that way. So I've gone 5 questions without actually asking an AI question, but I have to do it. So this is for you, Patrick. There's a lot of discussion about, what's happening, what are the end users thinking, et cetera. But I think a very important question becomes the enablement piece and what are the distributors doing to enable your customers, right? Also jointly with the vendor community, because the gentleman from Lenovo talked about what was important to him, but what's important to you as it relates to the things that you think need to be done to help prepare your customers for leveraging and monetizing AI into the marketplace?
Right. Yeah. So great. Happy to talk about AI. I think first thing when it comes to AI for distribution or this discussion is it's the same sort of words that you can use for any industry, and that is AI for distribution and distribution for AI, right? It's 2 different things. Same thing, cybersecurity, right? AI for cybersecurity, in other words, we're using AI to enhance our cybersecurity, or cybersecurity for AI, right? So just slightly different. And in the case of distribution, AI for distribution means we begin to build AI models, pilots, and solutions into our own platform, like Jaideep described, so that we can become more efficient, leverage our incredible position as these entities that sit at the intersection of data, which is what distribution does, right? We sit with the entire universe of channel partners in front of us and a line card of vendors behind us. And now we've got all that data, and if we're managing it well and keeping it clean, wow, let's bring AI to work because we can move from reactive to predictive, right? All those kinds of great things happen. So obviously we all have different use cases. I'm sure we're all doing different things where we're looking at how we bring AI for distribution. Your question is more about distribution for AI. So generally speaking, I don't think any of us here are distributing semiconductors in this room and GPUs per se. There are specialists who do that business. We're more in, obviously, in supporting our vendors that are incorporating those silicon into their overall solutions and putting software on top of it, right? So we're not out selling GPUs like a semiconductor distributor. Those guys do exist, but that's not this audience. So how do we then distribute AI? Because we know that's where all the value is kind of sitting in a lot of that spend that goes on today. For me, what I see happening is around building a supply chain for customers to use AI. So if we think about a couple of the, Sandra and Michael's discussions today. So, you know, the first discussion saying, wow, look at all the spend that's happening on AI, right? Guess what? If this doesn't take hold, if this commercial model doesn't work, you know, there goes the stock market and there goes the global economy. We're going to have a big, you know, boom, right? .com boom, the AI sort of bubble is going to burst, right? But we know that's not likely to happen because these companies are going to continue to compete to get customers, right? They're all spending so much, they're not going to just die, right? They're spending so much on the capital investments for their business, they're going to do whatever it takes to bring on customers. That includes bringing their costs down and making the AI platforms more available to more customers until it gets adopted. So that's one. But we see, you know, if you think about Sandra's discussion, when she talked about one of those roles of the CIO was that talent, what was it? The talent architect, right? And in that, she mentioned the talent architect, the CIO, or whether it's a CIO or a COO or somebody in that function, needs to understand all the workflows within the business in order to redesign workflows and processes so that that company can bring AI or agentic AI to life inside their business. And I started thinking about the realities in our region and how it's a bit slow, right? We're not there yet. It hasn't really happened to a lot of businesses here. There's some good examples and use cases, but it's tougher. And part of the reason it's tougher is because a lot of the businesses that need to adopt AI also rely on other partners in the supply chain to deliver different parts. But if those partners aren't bringing their cleaning their data, if they're not delivering bits and pieces that are required, it slows down the ability for another company to actually drive brand new processes or prepare themselves for this new AI world. So where does all that go? I think it means that distribution actually in our ecosystem can play that role as the sort of platform and the AI enabler for an AI-driven supply chain, right? Vendors, channel partners, distributors, running through distribution, we're creating a data-capable platform with AI capabilities in a way maybe our channel partners aren't really ready to do because it's tough for them to make that investments. They're not really that sophisticated. They've got a ton of other challenges. Vendors want to get out and spread their solutions out, leveraging the power of AI. It really comes to distribution as the one who can start to drive that. And I think that's going to be true in many industries, not just in IT, where we're going to see, you know, this sort of middle consolidated role, whether you call it a distributor or an aggregator, or a wholesaler, or some other platform provider who's going to bring that capabilities to enable and faster adoption of an AI-capable supply chain, which will speed up AI adoption to end users themselves. That's kind of where I see this headed, and I think that's a huge opportunity. And it all starts with us sitting here as the purveyors of great data and a deep understanding and an ability to leverage a platform. So those are my thoughts, and a lot of it just came from listening to you guys today, frankly.
Well, that's good. That's why we had them up front.
Yeah. So don't make me go first.
Exactly.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
If you've seen any technology evolution, breakthrough, scaling, there are two things that I see very fundamental to that. One is productizing, whether it's a smartphone apps, PCs, internet. Second is channels that can do this repetitively. So the trick will be whether it's, you know, we talk about use cases loosely, we talk about AI applications, we talk about In the cloud, we talk about assessment, migration, FinOps, many things we talk about. But today, every customer situation, every use case is unique, largely bespoke. I think as a community between vendors, distributors, channel partners, the more we can standardize and convert them into products. I see, for example, we're in the middle of creating an agentic catalog, which we will take to market. Now, that doesn't mean it'll work for everybody. Over time, there'll be verticals and horizontals on it. So you're productizing it. So there may be 10,000 agentic apps, you can just choose. The second part is on the evolution. As we talk today about CSPs, MSPs, MSSPs, there's definitely a potential for creation of AI MSPs. What does that mean? So these people will be experts at taking a use case and putting a filter through and say, okay, for this kind of a use case with this budget, this is the right kind of tool, kind of platform, kind of approach to take to provide a solution. So that evolution will happen. These two will be, in my mind, game changer. You're productizing the solution, you're productizing the go-to-market. And again, we're trying to do something in that space, how to approach this. I think as a community, we should do that, because otherwise AI will be a pipe dream, because everything will be a development, everything will involve time and money. You'll never be able to get whether it's revenue or productivity.
Can I just say, I think that's a really great example, Harry, because fundamentally what you just described, if you step back to 10,000 foot view, it's kind of what we've always done, right, in distribution, which is we take new tech, prepare the channel, build enablement programs, get it adopted, and then drive it at scale so that it can be utilized for our success. And it's fundamentally what we always have done. I think the way you just put that makes a lot of sense. And that sort of coupled with this concept of a digital supply chain, it all makes sense there, right? That's what's going to drive faster adoption. And in this region, I think distribution will play even a bigger role than it may in a more, some of the more mature markets or where you have, less variation. So, yeah.
Harry, you mentioned earlier some success you've been having with AI PCs. I think, however, if you look at it, sort of at a macro level, the results so far have been, I think, underwhelming a little bit, right? I know my friend Brian would tell us that, right? He's told me that. That's one of the reasons I'm asking this question. So the results that you're seeing, what are some of the use cases? What are some of the areas where you're seeing progress, and what's your viewpoint, sort of going forward on the opportunity in this area?
So I think it was an accidental report that we saw in terms of looking at our results in the 22% connect. I still don't relate on the PC front to the actual use cases and the PCs being deployed. Clearly, we see some good progress in the workstations area for technical use cases, whether it's design, whether it is media and entertainment, a lot of the verticals. So we're seeing AI workstations being deployed for computational things that are definitely making progress. That and GPUs being deployed in both the on-prem and the data server spaces where we are seeing. We still don't understand, there is not a killer application yet on PCs which will turn the game. But we're just seeing, it's nice to see adoption of the higher tops machines. That's if that's a trend, people are just saying, okay, I need to get some of these for my employees to be able to experiment with more AI on the edge. That's a nice phenomenon, but I don't see a killer application yet on it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, kind of getting close to the end here, Luis, digital platforms came up. Jaideep mentioned digital platforms and how significant they are. I happen to be a huge believer and have been for a while and been talking about it. And I know all of you have made massive investments, in this area, right? And those investments will pay off. Talk a little bit about, one, what you view as some of the advantages, but also what are some of the challenges perhaps that you're seeing in terms of the implementation, because, you know, this is not going to be one of those ones where, you know, they get deployed and everybody just immediately flocks to them and they're using it 100%, right? And I'm hearing various things over, you know, my discussions with both your customers, not specifically your customers, but customers of distribution, as well as some of the vendors. So talk a little bit about what's happening.
Yeah, so becoming a platform company takes years. You see some cases that we all know, like Amazon, right, like Uber and others, right? So, and for our case, right, I think the becoming a platform company starts with people, right? So 4 years ago, we took a decision to bring a global leader with experience, Sanjeev. Some of you already know him. He was in Singapore some months ago. And Sanjeev built a totally different team. And he brought a team with expertise leaders with expertise from a global standpoint to develop our Xvantage platform, right? So the idea of Xvantage, and this is a journey, our platform, a platform is a journey for all companies. And I think that it will never end. You have a day of start, but I don't think you have a day to end it. Is that we try to replicate our business, what we do in an offline mode with all of you, in a digital world. So like, let's call it a digital twin. And I'm going to give some examples, right? So pick up the vendor, okay? We have today a cybersecurity vendor that today we are fully integrated and automated with them. And what we do from a cybersecurity angle of quotes, pipeline, right? That takes days, approving of special pricing, go back and forward by email. With all this automation at a global scale, and now we do business with them in hours, right? So what it took us days becomes now a reality translated in hours. So our teams from a vendor and at the Ingram standpoint are much more focusing on developing enablement and creating net new business, okay? So this is an example from a vendor side. Now, this takes time, right? So you see the vendor community that we have here, and the number of vendors even IT that we all as a distributor have. To integrate, to automate takes years, okay? Now let's speak about the partners, right? The resellers. The resellers today with Ingram, and it's some of these things that I'm going to speak are already a reality. Some of them we just deploy, and some of them we are going to deploy in the next couple of weeks and months. Partners can quote, they can manage their pipeline and opportunity in a single plane of gas. Now you have at the platform with Xvantage, we integrate both hardware, software, and services from a quote and one single invoice billing, okay? So you were not capable to do this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you are not capable if you really don't integrate all your processes internally from a company standpoint. Due to the fact that we have, and all our companies here have a lot of years in this market, some more than others, but a lot, tens of years. So if you pick it, we have a lot of data, right? So it comes to the second problem is how you manage data, how you clean it, right? And how you make it valuable. And data for our partners is becoming valuable now in a very easy way. They can have access to what is the business that they are doing with us and what are the industries that they are playing. What is the upsell that they can do on that industries? You pick up renewals. Our resellers have the renewal base there. So they can have ARR, MRR, they can predict how their business is going to flow. So when you have all of this automation, and we are now putting pre-sales as a service there. Everything that you ask us that takes some days with the AI models is taking hours. We have pre-sales as a service there. Now we are building solution architecture with end user cases. So if you take Pink as an example, our Enable as AI program, that is it covers a global landscape. We have 3 big pillars there already reflected in our platform. Assessments, in order that you can see the maturity of the customer on the AI journey. You can have the foundationals, that you can have certifications and training models there. And you can have what we call scale, where we connect end user cases around AI with that technology stack. Now, this is powered by 400 AI models and patents that Ingram have registered. So for doing this, it took us 1 year to build the team, less than 1 year, probably 6-9 months, and 3 years as a journey. And it's impressive what we are all learning during that journey. The way that we are managing now our business is totally different than we have done in the past 20 to 30 years. So we are going with the platform, we are becoming more of an orchestrator, and I think that AI is pushing on that direction.
Yep, excellent. Well, look, first of all, I want to thank you all for this panel, but more importantly, I want to thank you for something else. I mentioned earlier, you know, our journey, GTDC's journey into APJ. These four gentlemen on the panel here have been instrumental in helping drive that, right? We met, you know, all of you 4 years ago, or 2 years ago, and talked about what we needed to do, how we were going to do it, and it's materialized because of your support. So I just want the vendors in the room and the distributor folks in the room and all others in the room to understand how significant that support is, because, you know, frankly, we wouldn't be successful, GTDC wouldn't be able to provide what we do without the support from this team.